Once thought extinct in Canada, the tiny, speedy, swift fox has made a remarkable recovery in the prairies. In the 1930s, swift foxes completely vanished from Canada due to habitat loss, trapping, and poisoning. But thanks to captive breeding and reintroduction efforts starting in 1983, the swift fox population has grown to more than 1,000, and their range has expanded across Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Montana. In fact, Grasslands National Park in Saskatchewan, Canada is now home to around 96 swift foxes alone. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video to learn how reintroduced bison also play a critical role in the swift fox story. The return of the swift fox marks a hopeful sign that the imperiled Canadian prairie ecosystem is on the mend, and is a testament to one of the most successful reintroduction and conservation projects in the world.
So the swift fox is a cat-sized canine, weighing only around 5 pounds, that can run up to 60 kilometers an hour or 37 miles per hour. It is a nocturnal predator adapted to shortgrass prairies, using dens year-round for shelter and raising their young.
Dens are usually 2 to 4 meters in length with 4 entrances to avoid being cornered by predators. These entrances are small, which also allows swift foxes to quickly escape from larger predators who won't fit inside.
Swift foxes prey on rodents, rabbits, insects, and birds. Their distinguishing features include black patches on the sides of their snouts and a black-tipped tail. As a native prairie predator, the swift fox plays a key ecological role in the grasslands ecosystem.
We've completely lost our memory of what grassland was because we got rid of so much of it.
Still, there are people working to keep it wild.
I don't want to see any species die out. If that means that we have to adjust the way that we do things, then that's our job.
Swift foxes were once common across the Canadian prairies until the early 1900s. The last sighting of a swift fox in Canada was in 1938, and they were declared extirpated or locally extinct in 1978.
Historically, the swift fox was actually considered an abundant predator of the prairies. According to fur trading records dating back to the mid-1800s, swift foxes were once so abundant that 117,000 were trapped in a 20-year period. In the early 1900s, when Canadian territories were becoming more populated and both agriculture and ranching became extensive, the loss of natural grasslands habitat absolutely gutted the Canadian swift fox population.
The main threats that led to their demise were conversion of native prairie to farmland, trapping, and poisoning campaigns meant for wolves and coyotes.
Today, swift foxes occupy less than half of their historic range in the United States, and less than 90% of their historic range in Canada. They still face habitat fragmentation and poisoning. Conservationists believe that swift foxes can be considered indicators of an intact grasslands ecosystem, and that conserving habitat for swift foxes benefits other wildlife species.
In 1973, a private captive breeding program began in Alberta with the goal of someday reintroducing swift foxes back into the wild. Between 1983 to 1997, hundreds of foxes were released in Alberta and Saskatchewan using both captive breeding and translocated wild foxes from the US. Soft and hard release methods were used to help establish the population.
Saving endangered species is not easy. Endangered species are endangered for a reason. And the reasons are normally that something's gone dreadfully wrong. The fact that they're endangered is one thing, but when we deal with a situation such as we have with swift foxes, you know that it's about as bad as it can get. Even though there used to be hundreds of thousands of them on our native prairie. The swift fox actually went extinct in this country by 1938. So we want to make a difference, to work with others, to bring the species back, to restore past wrongs, and to help the species survive into the future.
And the reintroduction program proved highly successful. A census in 2000 and 2001 showed that the swift fox population had tripled compared to just 1996. In addition, their known range also expanded from 25 to 76 townships across Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Montana. Based on this recovery, their status in Canada was changed from extirpated to endangered in 1998.
In general, what we found is that the population has been spreading both in its size and in terms of the number of foxes that are out there. At the same time, in some areas, we've actually seen a lower occurrence of swift foxes, and so that has enabled us to take management actions to actually help the population even more than we have in the past.
So the swift fox holds special cultural significance for many Indigenous peoples. Historically, several First Nations had fox warrior societies that revered the swift fox for its speed, cunning, and bravery. To the Blackfoot Confederacy tribes, the kit fox was considered a sacred and spiritually powerful animal.
The swift fox has many roles and a wide degree of importance, I think, ranging from ecological to almost emotional grounds. And if we lose them, in some ways we lose the integrity of the native prairie species and the native prairie ecosystem. But beyond that, we lose, I think, a very significant part of ourselves.
Today, Blood Tribe elders in Alberta recognize the swift fox, which they call Sinopa, as an integral part of their cultural heritage and spirituality. In 2004, swift foxes were reintroduced to Blood Tribe lands in southwestern Alberta, helping to strengthen this traditional connection. Ultimately, successful recovery of the species requires ongoing respect for and cooperation with Indigenous peoples as key land stewards and knowledge holders in this region.
Tonight, when I go to sleep, I know there's a piece of the puzzle that's here now, and it's up to us to figure out what's going to happen, how we're going to go about it, and what we have to learn. And that's something to look forward to.
Grasslands National Park in southern Saskatchewan has played an important role in the return of the swift fox. Reintroductions to the park began in the 1990s. The park provides ideal habitat for swift foxes, with shortgrass prairie, rolling hills, and abundant prey species.
When they're above ground, swift foxes prefer prairie grasslands like those found here in the Grasslands National Park. Actually, 1/6 of the Canadian population can be found here. The rest of the Canadian population are found across the Great Plains of Saskatchewan and Alberta.
Park managers are working to expand and improve swift fox habitat through ongoing efforts to restore cultivated land back to native prairie grasses. So far, over 600 acres of former cropland have been reclaimed. Prescribed burns are also used to rejuvenate the grasslands. Grasslands National Park is one of the only protected areas for mixed grass prairie in all of Canada, home to an incredible diversity of 70 grass species and 50 wildflower species that form the foundation of this ecosystem.
We've taken on a huge challenge to do the largest survey ever of swift foxes in Canada and in the adjunct populations in the United States. We've had teams of 2 spread across the Canadian prairie and other teams of 2 in Montana that are monitoring the foxes every night.
And within Grasslands National Park, swift foxes benefit from a mutually beneficial relationship with reintroduced plains bison.
Another factor that impacted swift fox habitats is cattle, which eventually replaced the bison as the main ruminant in their prairie ecosystem. Because of this, grasses became taller. There was a loss of prairie dogs, which resulted in a loss of dens and prey for swift foxes.
Bison grazing helps keep the grass short, which is preferred by swift foxes for denning and keeping watch for predators like coyotes. The dung left behind by bison also attracts many insects, providing an important food source for swift foxes. As a keystone species that shapes the entire prairie landscape, The bison's return has been critical for maintaining the ecosystem that swift foxes and many other rare species depend on. Seeing swift foxes and bison thrive together once again in Grasslands National Park is a powerful symbol of conservation success and a strong testament to creating more holistic ecosystems.
We need to lead by example, and when we do so, it conveys that we will also not stand for the extinction of species in our backyard. We can do this by combining science with action.
So the Swift Fox Reintroduction Program is considered one of the most successful examples of carnivore restoration in North America. Today, the population has remained stable and expanded to over 1,000 foxes across its original range in Canada and northern Montana. This demonstrates the importance of protecting native grasslands and the potential for species recovery when we work together.
You know, sometimes some things leave and you always hope for them to come back. And that's part of the swift foxes. They came back too, like we did and like the bison did.
The story of the swift fox highlights the power of collaboration between Indigenous groups, government agencies, private landowners, and conservation organizations. While there is still more work to be done to ensure the swift fox and the prairie ecosystem continues to thrive, this is an important milestone to celebrate.
Now they're here, they're reproducing in a place that they were gone for decades. I can't explain that feeling, because we did this as a team. We brought them back.
You can support swift fox recovery by visiting Grasslands National Park to see this unique landscape firsthand. Donate to conservation groups working to protect remaining grasslands and reintroduce native species. Learn more about the fascinating creatures that call the prairies home and share this hopeful story far and wide. Together, we can build a brighter future for the swift fox and the wild prairies it embodies. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.